No, that's not quite right. Let me try that again. Just I'm on your side. No, that's not quite it either. Oh, I didn't see you there. Hi, I'm Tyler Carrington, German Studies professor here at Cornell College. I'm working on a project for my friend James. He's asked me to put down a Fender Rhodes solo on a song we're working on together. Kind of hit a dead end. Let's give him a call, see if we can chat a little bit about it. James, how's it going, man?
What's going on, Tyler?
I've been working on this solo for this new song, and I feel like I've hit a little bit of a dead end. And so I thought, well, James is the best songwriter I know. We write a lot of songs together. So I wanted to ask you, James. I mean, you write a lot of songs, and you've been writing songs for a long time. What's your normal process look like for writing a song? Like, I assume some things come to you in the moment, and you sort of, it might not be immediate, but you have sort of the idea right away. Other things probably you work on, struggle with, set down, come back to. Can you describe your process briefly?
Yeah, for me, it's a lot of fragments. So like, if you look at my voice memo section or my note section on my phone, it's just thousands upon thousands of things, and it's kind of letting those fragments come and go as they please. It's some like you said, like sometimes the fragment will come and it'll get stuck in your head and you'll just have to hammer that thing out, and it just comes naturally. The whole thing kind of falls into your lap. Other times you get this little piece of something and it's kind of stuck in your head and you chew on it for a long time. And other times you get a fragment. I've started doing this, like it'll come to me and I'll record it and I won't even listen to it again.
Yeah.
Just because it didn't hit me the same way, and maybe it'll come back to my head later. But kind of being free with those thoughts kind of coming in and out of your head. And I think the thing that's like really important is just like, if it rings true to you, it rings true. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
if it sticks, it sticks. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And being kind of open-handed with how those things pass in and out of your mind and in and out of your process.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you if you find yourself getting stuck, do you have and it's it's something where right now you're working up a full album, right? A full solo album, and there's not necessarily a time crunch, but you want to get it out there. If you find yourself in
Mhm.
sort of a moment where you're getting stuck, but you want to get it out, you need to sort of move on with the process. Do you have any sort of go-to moves, any things to help you sort of work through that sort of block?
Yeah, I might have I probably would have had a different answer to this 6 months ago, but like we're working on this thing together right now. And I'm actually in a season right now of, if I get stuck, I try to embrace the stuckness, as kind of having a meaning of its own. So this, maybe the people that are listening don't, but as I'm getting stuck on songs that feel like, I don't know, I can't push it forward, I don't know how it fits, that sort of thing, I just it. Doesn't mean it doesn't mean it was a bad song. Doesn't mean it's like right now. I just feel like if it like I said, if it rings true to me, then I'm gonna push forward on it. And there's a difference, right? You can get stuck on a part or a moment of that song, and that's worth wrestling through. And sometimes you feel stuck because in your heart, if you really are paying attention, it doesn't feel right. And you
Right.
just kind of be able to discern the difference. But yeah, my friend Allie always says she's a button chair writer. Sometimes you just gotta like get your butt in the chair and keep working at it and keep picking away.
Right.
And piece by piece, it comes together. And sometimes it'll come in the middle of the night and just wake you up, and you got to go record a voice memo, and the next day you got it. So
I've had
patience, I
that
guess.
too. I've had that too, James, where I mean, it's sometimes it actually has come in a dream, which seems a little bit like cheating, but like,
Right.
an idea really does come to you in the night, and you either write it down or you wake up and you're like, all right, I got to work this in. I had things too come to me.
Right.
I used to swim a lot, and while I was swimming laps, I would sort of have an idea come to me, or I'd sort of work through an idea, and I'd be like, all right, that's it, you know, write that down when you get out of the pool, when you get your hands dry.
Right.
So you're saying some moments when you get stuck, you pay attention to and it's not just like, well, okay, I'm stuck. It's like, hey, maybe this isn't the right direction. Just turn around, go a different direction.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, it takes practice to discern the difference, I think, you know, and I'm trying to get better at it.
How and to what extent do you work in and seek out, should say those in the other direction, seek out and then work in the feedback of other people?
Yeah. I kind of live a lot of my writing life by this James Baldwin quote, which I don't have memorized, but he basically talks about everyone has one story to tell, and they just keep telling it, finding new ways to tell it until it becomes clearer and clearer and clearer, and more to the true of who they are, right? And so part of me feels like at the end of the day, I know that it's me that's going to have to reckon with my story. But I firmly believe that every person should be kind of working with a funnel. You know what I mean? Like having your, you know, who are your influences and who do you value in terms of musicianship, or, you know, like whose writing style do you really connect with, that sort of thing. And then whose opinions do you really value? Who are the people that, you know, like for us, we have a band, you know what I mean? Like
right.
even in that band, like I know, you know, like this person comes from more of a rock background. So if I kind of have that, you know, that angle that I'm trying to go here, that's the person's opinion I want to value the most, you know, that sort of thing.
Right.
And you kind of put all these things, you cast your net wide and get as much as you can get. But at the end of the day, the hardest part is just funneling it down.
Yeah.
Okay, now taking all that into account, what's true for me? And I think sometimes part of why I scrap a song is I'll write something and I'll have in my head like, oh, that sounds like Stevie Wonder. You know what I mean? Like, that sounds like Stevie Wonder. And then all of a sudden, like, it'll occur to me like, oh, that's a song for Stevie Wonder to sing. You know what I mean? Like, that's not actually mine, you know? And so, yeah, it's just, at the end of the day, it's your story, and you have to, like, it has to resonate with you. Even if it would be a great song or a great story for somebody else's eyes, if it's not true to you, it's not going to be your best work.
Right. Right. When you're done with a song, or when you feel like you have sort of a first draft, what do you normally do? Do you let it sit for a little while and come back to it? Do you sort of say, hey, I'm in the zone, let me sort of finish it out and put it aside and be done with it? How do you know when you're done with something and ready to sort of send it out there?
Yeah, I think that's a hard question. To me, the answer is clear to me, but I don't know if it makes sense to anybody else. It's kind of like when the tension's gone, you know. So sometimes I'll put down an entire song in a sitting, and I will not adjust that song. I'll say like, this is done. You know what I mean? Like I have no tensions about it. It feels perfectly right. It does not need an edit. Which is weird, you know, like you kind of want to make sure that you're editing things, that sort of thing, but sometimes it just hits, and if it hits, then that's great. And other times I'll put together a song and I'll be like, oh, it's really good, but for whatever reason I feel tension about it. I'm still thinking of parts in my head. I still am putting down voice memos during the day, and I could say it's done, and it would be fun, but I have that tension in my head that like that I'm not exactly getting to what I want to there, or it's missing. I say this to you all the time. This is missing this piece, you know.
Right.
And then I got to figure out how to add that piece in, you know. So
yeah. And sometimes then, you know, you'll say, hey, this is missing, you know, whatever, this kind of a part. And it's happened, of course, in this project alone, where and I've written something, I've added something to it, and you say, hey, like that's good. Now it makes me want to add this part in with it, or something like that. This kind of this sort of like iterative process where you're creating something, getting feedback, sort of, you know, reworking it, and then based on that, continuing to rework it and so on. But
for sure,
James, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, of course. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, we'll see you.
All right, so there you go. That's my conversation with James Tutson, my bandmate and friend, about his writing process. Apart from being interesting, I hope that stirs some ideas up for you about your own writing process. Now, of course, it might not be the songwriting process, although I have a sense that probably there are some of you in the house who are indeed talented songwriters. If so, let's get together. Let's work on something together. As you can see, I'm set up here in the home studio. Just to pull out a couple of overall themes for you, things that strike me in the moment. The creative process, as you know by now, the creative process is certainly not linear, right? It usually probably looks different each time you go about writing something, whether a song or an essay or a piece of art or whatever, for that matter, an Instagram post maybe, or a live story or something. It looks different each time, and it probably looks different at different points during each individual project. But I think there can be some consistency in how you go about approaching things. Certainly planning and brainstorming, this is critical, right? It's often easy to tell when evaluating writing things that were planned out and things that just sort of came out and were just sort of thrown onto the paper, thrown against the wall, and just sort of let stick. So planning and brainstorming is important, but it's also true that it's hard to know what you want to say before you really get into doing it. And I was always someone, for example, who maybe I created an outline, but my best ideas my best conclusions usually came as I was making them, right? I would often write myself into a good point or into a good argument or into a good story. So I think writing, as James and I were talking about, really is this sort of iterative process, meaning that it's something that you keep coming back to, continue to tweak, adjust based on those tweaks, and so on. Sometimes I think this means deleting things that you really like. And boy, that's hard. That's hard to stomach. We usually really like the stuff that we write. But it's usually the case, I find, that we end up overwriting things. We write too much. We say things too many ways. We say the same thing too many different ways. And there is usually, not always, but there's usually addition by subtraction. And so this is where letting someone sit down or letting it sit and then coming back to it can be quite useful. The other main thing, and you heard James talking about he was referencing James Baldwin and everyone having sort of a story to tell, and basically what we do is continually telling this same story from different perspectives. I'm really glad James raised that point, because this is something I think that is critical to writing, whether it's writing a song, whether it's writing a book, whether it's writing an essay for a course that you're taking. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're writing, to me, it's pretty much all about storytelling. And I think it's helpful to think about what you're doing in terms of a story. Think about what you want the plot to be, what you want the takeaway point to be. What's the drama of the story that you're telling? Keep that in mind. And as you're planning, as you're writing, and even when you have a finished draft, make sure to go back and check at all of these points. Make sure to go back and check that you have made your story and that you've made your takeaway point as clear as it can be. I think there is a certain beauty in subtlety, right, and not sort of hitting someone over the head with your point. But at the same time, I think for most purposes, there's no such thing as too much clarity when it comes to telling your story. And as I evaluate students writing here at Cornell and elsewhere as well, probably the single most common problem that I find is that it's not clear what the story, what the argument is. So check and then double check this. And I think that conceiving of your writing as a story can help out with this. Finally, and this is sort of the last couple of things that James and I were talking about, I think that good writing really is collaborative. Getting additional eyes on your project, on your writing, can really only be a good thing. That doesn't mean that you always have to agree with what people say. And you heard James saying, it has to continue to ring true with you. It has to still be the story that you want to tell. And it can be the case that we ask someone for input and that person sort of steers us in a different direction, and it becomes something that we're not even interested in telling anymore. So that's certainly important to be aware of, but I think that it's rarely harmful to the process of writing and to the creative process to have someone, to get other eyes on your project. And it usually results in a better product. I think that your roommates, your friends, your peers at the writing center, our writing center is wonderful. I think that these are all really, really excellent resources for you. And I highly encourage every student, even students who think that they're wonderful writers, every student from top to bottom to head to the writing center and get an additional set of eyes. Because remember, asking for someone else to look at your work is really the opposite of failing. It's not taking a shortcut. It's not giving up. It is done literally at every part of the writing process everywhere. Whether it's in book publishing, where an editor and peer reviewers are just constantly and over editing your stuff. Even songwriting, right, where a good producer ideally is sort of making suggestions for trying something different. Why don't you try pairing these two instruments together? What if you got rid of the bridge? What if you added a chorus here? What if you started at this point in the song or whatever? A good producer will again sort of help you to, will help give you some important feedback. Make no mistake, the very, very best writers, the very best creators all have people help edit their stuff heavily. And certainly essays that you're writing here at Cornell are absolutely no exception. These are just some of my takes on writing and the creative process more generally. Certainly seek out the other advice of your professors, of your friends, and look forward to the release of this new solo album, and certainly more of our own full band stuff. You can see us at jamestutson.com, and I think we're going to be playing at Cornell sometime this fall, so you can look forward to that. Thanks for watching.